आजा पीयूष आजा, ये वाली कॉपी कर। कॉपी करके ये वाली बैनर लगेगा। कर दिया ना। कॉपी नहीं किया आपने अभी?
अभी तो मैंने लगाया ही था।
अच्छा,
बैकड्रॉप आप डाल भी देना।
वीडियो नहीं चल रहा ना?
ने वीडियो मना कर दिया। शुभिका देख लो। अरे थोड़ा ऊपर
क्या?
थोड़ा नीचे से नाम नहीं आ रहा। ये ऐसे ही है। ये इम्पैक्ट का लोगो बड़ा करते हैं। ओरिजिनल फाइल को प्रेजेंट करिए। जगह ही कहाँ है? शुभिका नहीं होगा।
ये आपको सही कि नहीं है?
टैक्स तो नहीं चला जाएगा।
But he is a leader on the otherwise. समझ गया? सारा काफी है।
ये चेंज कर रहे हैं, कर रहे हैं।
कैसे डाला हुआ है ना? कैसे डाला है लेकिन
कुर्सियों का वो
कुर्सियाँ दीवार की तरफ
समाया नहीं है।
बंदे तो वैसे ही घूम जाते हैं।
बंदे को तो घुमा के दिया जाता है।
इशारे पे घूम जाते हैं। मुझे ये वाला लगेगा सफेद वाला, व्हाइट वाला।
दे रहा हूँ, रुक जा रुक जा।
हमारी टीम में से
ये बैग किसका है? ये हमारी टीम में से नहीं है, सर का है। एक कुर्सी खींच ही लो अंदर भाई। तुम
कौन से सर का?
वो जो पीपीटी वीपीटी दे के गया है।
अरे यार यही तो दिक्कत है, कलेश हो जाती है ना इन चीज़ों के लगे हैं। बोलते हैं जी हमारा बैग यहाँ से वहाँ रख दिया, फिर कहेंगे बोला ये ऐसा नहीं ऐसा कर दिया जी, बैग ये कुर्सियाँ ज़्यादा लेंगे ना, कहेंगे कुर्सियाँ तो ज़्यादा ले ली।
बैकडोर एंट्री कर ले।
लो भाई तुम्हारे डिग्री वाले सर। ठीक है भाई, रख दिया मैंने, पीपीटी वाइट कर रखी है।
अब स्विच कर दो, हो गया। कॉपी तो उसका पेन ड्राइव लगा के निकाल के लगाना अपना। टेपिंग भी करना हो देख लियो, हो जाएगा। ठीक, हेलो हेलो, ठीक है भैया, अपना भी चेक कर लेना एक बार लास्ट। हेलो हेलो, चेक चेक, हेलो हेलो हेलो, चेक, हेलो हेलो, चेक वन, चेक, हेलो हेलो हेलो, चेक वन, चेक। चेक, हेलो हेलो, चेक, हेलो 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 हेलो, चेक, हेलो 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 हेलो, चेक, हेलो। चेक, हेलो हेलो, चेक वन, चेक, हेलो 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 हेलो, चेक, हेलो हेलो, हेलो, चेक, हेलो, चेक वन, चेक, हेलो, चेक, हेलो हेलो हेलो, चेक, हेलो हेलो, चेक, हेलो हेलो हेलो, चेक, हेलो हेलो, hello, hello. Check one, check, hello, hello, check, hello, hello, hello. वो फुल है, फुल है. फिर आवाज फटेगी, फिर कहेगा आवाज फटेगी. किसको? ठीक. ठीक, हेलो, हेलो. ठीक है ना?
इसमें
हेलो, ठीक है. हेलो, हेलो, चेक, चेक. बोलियो, बोलियो एक बार. नहीं, रिटर्न आ रहा था ना.
तो हॉल में बैठ कर रहा हूँ ना, वो भी तो देखो.
नहीं, ऐसे वो टेनी वाला मैंने बंदी कर दिया है. और जो जो वहाँ से लैपटॉप से मेरे इसमें आया है. अब आउटपुट चंदन, आप चंदन इनपुट माइक ले. ठीक, हेलो.
अभी क्या सा
Um, hello.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, can you hear me?
ठीक हेलो
Hello. Johan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Just put it on the chat box में डाल दो. Need to do an audio test. Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. I think audio थोड़ा बढ़ा दो. Right, we can hear you. I hope we can see you as well.
Yeah, can you
Yes,
see me?
all right, we can see you. Thank you, thank you. We'll start in about 3 minutes. Just give us some time, yeah. Let's start. Ashika, मेरा फोन ले लो, फोटो में ऐसी आनी चाहिए. करो करो करो. कहीं भी बैठा दो. देबू सर, राकेश, हाँ ठीक है. 5 चेयर है, एक हटाओ. डाल दो. There are enough people. 1, 2, 4 हो गया बस. देबू सर को पैड, हाँ नोट पैड दे दो प्लीज. Leave it. What sort of a? Leave it. No, I'm leaving it. अभी फ्री में काम कर रहे हैं क्या? ठीक है. हाँ, दो चाहिए. मेरे पास पेन है. He has a pen. Can we organize some audience, please? Let's do that. Ashika, I need people in the
Recording in progress.
We're also happy to announce this is an official pre-AI Summit event in the lead up to the AI Impact Summit in February 2026. I'd like to invite Mr. Debashish Bhattacharya, who's the session moderator on the dais, Mr. Rakesh Maheshwari, former Senior Director and Coordinator with METI and also a Distinguished Fellow at Cuts International, Dr. Debayan Gupta, Professor Ashoka University, Mr. Aman Taneja, Partner at Ikigai Law, Mr. Johan San Francisco, who's the founder of the research school, is joining us online, and Mr. Prasoon Srivastava, who is a journalist with the PTI, is also joining us. I will hand it over now to Mr. Debashish. This is a jointly organized panel by BIF and Cuts International.
Thank you very much, Shubhika. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the IIGF Workshop 4, which is on the subject of building trust in synthetic media through responsible innovation and governance. My name is Debashish Bhattacharya. I'm Senior DDG at Broadband India Forum, and I shall be moderating the session. To begin with, I'd like to just give a small little context to the subject which is being discussed today. It's my honor, first of all, to kick off this panel on building trust in synthetic media through responsible innovation and governance. Today we stand at a pivotal moment in the digital age. Synthetic media is nothing but AI-generated text, images, video, and audio is rapidly becoming a fixture across sectors, from education and entertainment to advertising and accessibility, generative AI, and is opening new frontiers. While synthetic media's promise is immense, trust is a major factor, and it's the currency of our information ecosystem, which is also equally under threat. There are today, for ladies and gentlemen, for those who are perhaps attending a session like this for the first time, there are nearly 35,000 deepfake model variants which are already publicly available, many of which are trained to generate images of specific people. Alarmingly, the research studies indicate there are about 96% of deepfake videos which are pornographic and non-consensual in nature. Beyond sexual exploitation, AI manipulated media is fueling misinformation and societal discord. So it's a major issue on hand which we are trying to address. The urgency of the issue is reflected in the policy responses from the government, which are evolving in real time. Our government has been proactive in recognizing the challenge of AI-generated content. Looking ahead, new regulations are already on the horizon. Just last month, many of you are aware, if I'm not mistaken, responses to which were required this month on 13th of November. MeitY released draft amendments to the IT rules, focus squarely on this issue of generative AI. These proposals would require that all AI-generated content be clearly labeled and traceable. The challenge for the country today is to craft responses, both technical and regulatory, that rein in the harms of synthetic media while harnessing its benefits. It's a delicate balance between innovation and accountability. We are not alone in this endeavor. There is much to learn from how other jurisdictions are approaching AI governance. For instance, the European Union, South Korea, China, US, and many of the other international regimes are trying to address generative AI and deepfakes, the challenges arising out of them. So with this as a short introductory remark, I would now like to invite first of all, introduce the entire panel. We have a very distinguished panel with us today in the afternoon to discuss this. To my immediate left is Mr. Rakesh Maheshwari. Mr. Rakesh Maheshwari, to his immediate left, before I get into the questions, I'll introduce the panel. We have to his immediate left is Professor Debayan Gupta, professor from Ashoka University. And then we have Mr. Aman Taneja, who is a partner in Ikigai Law. And to his extreme left is Mr. Prasoon Srivastava, who's a journalist and a very distinguished journalist from the Press Trust of India. We also have Mr. Johan, who is joined online. Mr. Johan is with a startup, And Mr. Johans, he's a founder of the Researcher School, which looks into AI study tools. So he has joined us virtually. So I welcome the entire panel sitting here as well as Johan. Welcome. With this short round of introduction, I'll now start with the questions. We will first have Mr. Rakesh Maheshwari to answer the first question. Mr. Rakesh Maheshwari is a former senior director and group coordinator, cyber laws, cyber security and data governance with MeitY, and a distinguished fellow with CUTS International. Mr. Rakesh Maheshwari needs no bigger introduction than the fact just to say that he has been a champion of data protection, data governance, and cyber laws in this country right from its inception. So with this short introduction, I now first request Mr. Rakesh Maheshwari, and before I actually ask him the question, I'd just like to make certain ground rules clear. We are going to have 2 rounds of questions for each panelist, and each panelist is required to give us your views and comments within a time span of 4 minutes. So we'll give you 4 minutes to answer the question, and then it passes on to the person next to him. So not the same question, I'll be asking a different question. So we'll have 2 round robins, one first round followed by another round, after which we will open the floor to the audience for some audience questions, and this can be both online, I presume, as well as physical. So feel free, audience, to hold your questions back so that you can ask your question, and last we will end up with closing remarks and one last question to each of the panelists. That's how we will actually go about this particular exercise. So to begin with, I'll ask Mr. Rakesh Maheshwari to lend his views on the new draft IT amendment rules which came out last month and which aims to combat the harms of synthetic media. However, stakeholders argue its broad definitions could chill lawful speech and its technical mandates may be unworkable. From your leadership and vantage point, what is the most significant unintended consequence that you feel the government should be trying to avoid while finalizing the IT amendment rules? Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah, as we talk about the unintended consequences, maybe let's try to understand as to what the government's at least intent is and what is the obligation that it is creating on the platforms and other stakeholders. So the problem of deepfake synthetic generated media is now well known. The kind of harms that it can create is also well known, and therefore the aim of government particularly to see that harms at individual level, at community level, to the electoral process, to the national security are curbed, that the new rules have been proposed. Synthetic generated information definition has been added, and that's what is contentious to me, I mean, at least, which as per the proposed amendment, it is the information which has been artificially or algorithmically created, generated, modified or altered using a computer resource in a manner that such information reasonably appears to be authentic or true. So having introduced this as the definition, the expectation of the government is that all intermediaries, because the rule is actually applicable to intermediaries, that all intermediaries who are in a position to generate or create such synthetic generated media should be able to put some sort of a label, either visual or otherwise metadata, which cannot be altered. And from the social media, there is an expectation that any such synthetically generated information, once declared by the user, should once again be labeled by the platform, and now when it is labeling, it can be whether it is to be in the text or it has to be in the video, photograph or in the audio has not been conveyed, and particularly the size is about 10% of the image, or maybe 10% of the total size of the video or audio, which therefore becomes a bit problematic. To me, therefore, first thing is that you definitely carve out this definition in such a manner. For example, let's say text is out of scope. Let's say, are you looking at every image which is a potential synthetically generated, or are you looking at only those images which have been declared to be synthetically generated? If you start looking at every maybe media, every information, it is bound to, the level at the scale at which it is being operated will definitely create a problem. Accuracy will always be an issue. So what kind of problem are we really going to address? I believe you must define the extent of problem, the root cause of the problem, and try to find out the optimum solution rather than create obligations, because 99% of what is synthetically generated is actually creative as well. Not everything is harmful, but if you start looking everything with suspicion, it doesn't work. So only look at those things where the suspicion is there. Now, how that can be done is something which needs to be discussed, and accordingly act. Also look for alternative solutions. The problem is clear, and ideally we should look at the problem and the solution.
Thank you, sir. That was very educative. You gave your views as well as the government's perspective on the rules and what are the challenges in meeting the requirements of the compliance requirements which are laid down in the rules. Thank you, sir. I now move on to Mr. Aman Taneja, a partner from Ekikai Law. Mr. Aman is known for his deep expertise in IP and technology law. So with this brief introduction, I'd like to ask Mr. Aman Taneja my first question to him, which is, Mr. Aman, starting off, could you shed some light on the global regulations or policy frameworks which are being used to tackle misuse of AI-generated media, particularly deepfakes and other misuses such as CSAM, which may be, and what may be some lessons that India can learn in its governance approach to handling synthetic media? Over to you.
Thanks for that question. I'll start with a very short response on the fact is that there are several approaches being taken globally. I think you alluded to some of those in your opening remarks, right? And I think that speaks to the scale of the problem. This is something countries all over the world are grappling with, and I don't think there is as yet a perfect solution, but there are aspects from the regulatory responses we are seeing in different jurisdictions that should guide our approach, right? And there are two specific things I would like to speak about today. And I think Mr. Maheshwari also alluded to this, right? Some of the approaches we are seeing are more targeted at specific harms that you are trying to prevent. At the moment, the way Indian law is, or the proposed change to the rules is almost like a hammer to the entire problem, right? And I'll give you some examples of slightly more targeted approaches. So Singapore, for instance, has a law focused on election-related content. So it bans online election advertising containing realistic depictions of other candidates, and so that's one type of extremely targeted response that you're seeing. One of the other issues we are seeing increasingly through AI-generated content is around impersonation. Now, Denmark, for instance, is thinking of amending its copyright law to allow average everyday people to enforce their rights in their likeness and image. So far in India, we've only seen courts do this for celebrities through the personality rights jurisprudence. Then there are also examples like in the US there is the Take It Down legislation, which again is targeted specifically at child sexual abuse material and non-consensual intimate imagery which is generated using AI tools. So one aspect I think which is worth learning from is like let's try and identify the problem statement. What are you trying to address? An omnibus kind of response to this is what ends up creating these unintended consequences that we're talking about, right? And I'm not saying it's an easy job. It does require some, it's not an easy thing to frame the problem that well. The other aspect that is important to look at is who is being regulated. So what is the site of regulation and what is the obligation that you're creating on each of these? So the site of regulation could be tools which are there, which exist to allow you to create content. There is the site of distribution, which is very often your social media platforms. And then there are, of course, the users who are actually using this to cause harm, right? And I'll just give one example. And also, so once you've identified the site of regulation, which our rules to the proposed rules try to do, and I think in response to the next question you have for me, I'll explain a little bit of where there's more to be done on that. But even in terms of, okay, you've identified the site, now what is the manner of regulation that you're going to do, right? Like, so if the site of regulation is the tools which allow you to generate content, one of the things generally people are agreeing on is that we should come up with some mechanism for provenance. Like, is this an image which has come out of an AI tool? Is it something? Now, the way, and Mr. Maheshwari spoke to this, what we have tried to do in our regulation is say everything. We've said label, watermark, metadata, all of that. And as a result of which we have this 10% requirement, right? And in contrast, jurisdiction like the EU has said, output needs to be marked in a machine readable format, and the standards for this will have to be interoperable, technically feasible, taking into account what is the current state of the art. And I think maybe Debayan might speak a little bit about what the state of the art around detection, provenance and all of that is. And in terms of lessons for India, I think some of this is actually already recognized by our own government in the AI governance guidelines, right? Two things they do. One, they recognize that there are industry efforts at creating some of these standards such as C2PA, right? The content provenance standard. And the second thing the government in the governance guidelines says is, let's bring together the experts across different fields to and also work towards developing standards which are global and interoperable. Like we said, this is a problem. There are lots of responses globally, and I think it'll be far more pragmatic if they speak to each other and there is some consensus around some of the standards which are technical in nature that need to be adopted, and very prescriptive rules on like 10% watermark really has that unintended consequence of killing a lot of commercial users. We've seen, Jio's just come out with a Mahabharat which is created using AI. Now with the 10% watermark across that, it's not going to necessarily work, right? So, I mean, my recommendation would honestly be, in some sense, take the advice the government itself has given in the governance guidelines of doing this a little bit more consultatively. You've established some of that institutional, mechanism of a expert committee which is going to come up with techno-legal solutions. Let them have that go. I found it a little odd that these rules came out the same week. This draft rules came out almost the same week as the governance guidelines saying something else. So, I mean, my suggestion would be, let's follow our own advice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My next panelist would be, in terms of asking questions, is Mr. Johan San Francisco, founder the Researcher School, and just a little introduction to him. Mr. Johan is the Research School is an education platform which is focused on integrating artificial intelligence into research and learning. He leads AI study tools, an initiative developing AI-driven tools for students and educators, and his expertise is into AI applications in education, drawing on a background that spans academic publication, operations management, and tech entrepreneurship. With this little introduction, I'd now like to ask Mr. Johan my first question. He's joined online, by the way. So, Johan, good afternoon. Presuming, or good morning, depending on which part of the world you are in, which I'm not aware. My first question to you is, as the use of Gen AI increases across the creative content, from a startup's perspective, how feasible is compliance with mandatory labeling and automated detection tools? This is my first part of the question. The second part is, what friction points do you foresee in user experience and innovation due to such mandatory labeling requirements? Over to you, Johan.
Yeah. Thank you, Devashish. It's a pleasure to join you from Pune. I'm in India. When we look at this amendment, specifically the mandate of 10% of visible labeling, and for automated detection, I think it is to distinguish there's a between the law, intent of the law, and the reality of technology. While the intent is noble, I think to stop misinformation. The challenge is that the technology is a little behind. It's not able to. It's more probabilistic and not deterministic. So it's more like a whack-a-mole where the AI detectors are evolving faster than the detectors. So this is a challenge, right? So even if you look at the strict 10% to enforce, there will, and we have, of course, you have the malicious content, which has to be restricted, and we all understand that. But there will also be, harmless content. When you're taking a family photo or a picture, when you go sightseeing, and you try to edit that frame because of the lighting or a blurring or something, then this leads to a syndrome called like warning fatigue, where the user over time keeps seeing this, I would say the label that always crops up even on harmless objects, right? So then it's very difficult for them to decipher which is real and not. It's like crying fox the whole time, and it becomes very difficult for the common user to distinguish which one to really take check. I think from a startup experience, from my perspective, I think they should not just look at it from a legal compliance, but you should look at it from a user's preservation. I think just sticking a sticker on it to say this is 10% of whatever, and you give the information of the source and the kind of LSA, it's going to distract the whole visual beauty of the image, right? So I think we need to look at how we can integrate this, through like a transparency, watermark, have it placed in the label, at the border of the image, or better still as Aman mentioned, as a C2PA, metadata. So I think as we like to move to this trust badges, standardizing data credentials, rather than just relying on giant overlays, that break the whole visual experience. So my simple position is, regulation is necessary, but it must be nuanced. We need a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. I hope I explained it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Lovely closing remark. I now have the pleasure of asking my next question to our distinguished panelist, a member of the distinguished panel, which is Dr. Debayan Gupta, professor from Ashoka University. He's a specialist in cryptography, privacy, and security of AI systems. And as I learned just before the panel started, he's also a specialist in many other subjects which I didn't know of, including biological sciences. And it was quite a revelation for me. So with that as a background, but I'm not going to ask questions on biological sciences, but I'm going to talk about the subject that is on hand. So Dr. Gupta, my first question to you is, what mix of technical interventions such as adversarial detection, provenance metadata, and cryptographic verification holds the most or the largest promise in offering layered defenses against the misuse of synthetic content? Over to you, Dr. Gupta.
You can use that. Okay, thank you. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the... Sorry. I'll give you sort of two answers to that question, because I think my real answer is kind of unsatisfactory, right? In reality, like everything else in life, chances are that we will need a multi-layered approach where we ask companies to put some kind of invisible watermark. Nano Banana already does that to some extent, and you can put in watermarks of that are not visible, that are indistinguishable from randomness, but that are hard to detect. But then, someone takes a photo of that photo and then that watermark's gone, right? Like, it is not very easy to keep that around when someone evil is trying to do something bad, right? And we've seen examples of this. We've seen especially audio deepfakes, which have become quite common. There was a recent one not too long ago during an election, where you had a local leader, his voice was deepfaked, saying, my son has died, so I'm not standing for the election. And it was around 6-8 hours before voting started. So there wasn't even enough time to react to it, right? So these are so I can completely see where the government is coming from on this. Provenance, not easy. Okay, it's just very, very, very difficult. Here's the main reason why. Think of who are the people who are enabling the generation of this stuff. Most of them are tiny startups all over the world. How are you going to force some tiny 3-person Slovenian startup to obey your law? Right? It's really difficult. And I do not envy the government in trying to define barriers on this. Cryptographically, there are certain things that can be done in terms of, when you post something, making it traceable to the original person who first posted it, that sort of thing. So you're not really doing anything about the content. That could have, you don't care. You're ensuring some amount of traceability within the system. But then that's also very hard because people copy paste this stuff all the time. And so my answer, the short answer is, there is no single answer. What we'll have to do is take the overlap of many imperfect things, and hopefully that will cover enough of the options to do something about it. The detection systems, it's weird. So we have very good detection systems for AI content. For those of you who are technically adept, it has been proved that all LLM, for example, responses lie on the surface of some high dimensional ellipse, and you can detect even which LLM it came from. Forget whether it's AI generated or not. The problem is, it costs a lot of money to do that. And you cannot do that with every single thing. As Sir said just a little while earlier, how are you going to do that for every image? And the problem with these definitions is that, first of all, everything is AI generated. You take this camera, you take a photo, your skin will appear a little bit whiter or something depending on what camera you used, right? Where do you,
If it is Facebook.
So, where do you draw the line? If I'm a gym trainer and I use my thing to make myself look a little bit thinner or whatever, everything, you take a selfie that is now algorithmically edited AI content, right? And the companies are going to see that, wait, if I label something as AI, incorrectly also, no harm done. If I don't label it, and suppose it turns out to be AI, I get into trouble. So I have a huge incentive to just keep labeling as AI. Right. So it's an odd situation, and I'm sure the legal minds here will have more to say about things like safe harbor and other things that may get people into trouble. But I'll also just end with one very small thing, which is my guess is, and this is really a guess, I don't like doing astrology, but this is my guess, that, once upon a time, photographs were evidence. Now I show you a photograph of some senior political leader taking a lot of money. You'll laugh at me. You'll say, "Arey bhai, Photoshop hai." I think it is going to take society a little bit of time to catch up, but we have to give up the goose on this. Like it's over. Audio and video are no longer evidence, and it's just going to take society a little bit of time to catch up.
Thank you. That was great learning. Hello, is the mic? Okay. So, thank you, Dr. Gupta. That was very enlightening. I now move to my next panelist, which is Mr. Prasoon Srivastava. Mr. Prasoon is a very eminent journalist from the Press Trust of India. Has been with the media for many years. Prasoonji, I'd like to ask you, from the perspective of trust, how is trust eroding, and what can be done to control this? That would be the subject of my question. The actual question is, the news publishers are increasingly using AI to make news more engaging and accessible through infographics. How do you see the potential labeling of all that content impact your use of these tools? Over to you, Prasoonji.
This first time as a media person I'll be answering these questions. So as Dr. Gupta said, that if you take your selfie and whether we should label it or not, I think when media comes online, I think as a journalist, I would like most of the things to be labeled as it has been synthetically generated or it is an authentic content, because there information is somewhere used as potential weapon for war also. So we need to see whether this information is being used creatively or it is being used to for lobbying or polarization. So all those factors we need to see. Now, having said that, government is making its effort to put a framework in place. It is fine-tuning law, but I don't think government or India alone will be able to do it. As we are talking about internet, it is global. So there has to be a sort of a multi-stakeholder approach where everyone comes and governs it and decides whether which sort of content should be labeled to what level. There have been occasions where you see in political rallies, the only front rows occupied, but we are shown that there's huge mass base there and political speech is being given and there's huge support. Then who's going to tell us whether this is an authentic content or not? So labeling, I think, will help in identifying and in our fight against misinformation.
Thank you, Prasoonji. We now enter into the second round of questions. I'll start again with the same cycle. I'll ask Mr. Rakesh Maheshwari. Sir, having led MeitY's cyber law division, in your opinion, what should India do to its regulatory frameworks for addressing high-risk use of generative AI? For example, identity fraud, misinformation, and how could MeitY's policies evolve in future in this regard? Over to you, sir.
So, to begin with, there are, I'll say, certain provisions already existing in the law, particularly for impersonation. And then forgery of any kind is also covered in BNS. So maybe therefore what really needs to be done, and then I'll also like to add, as far as these intermediary rules are concerned, they are applicable to intermediary platforms. Generative AI platforms may not fall within this definition of intermediaries. So, by the scoping itself, or by the scoping of the IT Act itself, these generative AI platforms may not fall within the scope of the Act, the rules, and hence are completely out of the subject matter which you want to regulate. What it really means is some sort of an amendment has to happen, either as a fresh law or as a IT Act itself. Second is, don't look into, maybe as Devyanji has mentioned, maybe Aman has also mentioned, don't try to solve all the problems in one go. Otherwise, it will lead to a fatigue which people will then start ignoring. So, if everything is getting labeled, then also it doesn't work. It's not just the platforms who are accountable, it's also the users who are accountable. As of today, all the responsibility has been casted or is expected to be casted on the platforms. What about the users who are actually into the game, who are also into the game? So while the larger platforms, which has rightly been stated, should be responsible at least for detection as and when maybe it has come to their knowledge, which is what they've been mentioned, is feasible. Beyond that, it should also be conveyed in the rules at least that anybody who does it with a fraudulent intent is liable to be deplatformed, and maybe if it is called for a criminal action, then certain criminal actions also need to be initiated. Simply taking the immunity out of the platform and immunity from the platform is not a solution, because each time government actually gives a warning that if you don't do this, your immunity is gone. That's not the answer. We don't know even as to how exactly the immunity will go. So let's talk of maybe creating some such system wherein some sort of a punitive action, particularly financial punitive actions, can be initiated rather than a go or no go kind of an answer.
Thank you, sir. I think that was music to our ears when you said the Gen AI should go outside the scope of the Act. Most of us agree. We have also said it in black and white. However, to hear it from a person who is an expert on the subject, it is really heartening. Thank you, sir. Of course, you also did point out some other very important points. I will go into that during the summary. I now move to my next panelist, which is Mr. Aman Taneja, partner in Ikigai Law. Amanji, my question to you is, given the IT amendment draft rules, which hint at obligation for platforms to verify harmful synthetic content, what are the practical implications of these rules for platforms handling, creating, distributing synthetically generated information? Do you think could this reshape safe harbor protections for platforms?
Thanks for that question. And if I'm permitted to, I just want to respond to something panelists said previously, and then I'll respond to this question. Actually, this is building off what Debayan and Prasoon said. I think you spoke about the challenge of kind of the technology here, and you said, labeling has its merits. And maybe you can reflect on this in your next response, but there is also talk of kind of flipping the trust ecosystem, right? Like, instead of trying to identify everything that is deepfake, let's instead focus on actual trustworthy sources. So if provenance, we have a gentleman here who's taking a photograph of this panel, right? And that's what some of these standards try doing. So from this camera till it is published online or in a newspaper, there is a trail which establishes that this is genuine. So instead of focusing on what is ingenuine, from looking at, you spoke about the societal challenge here, I think I feel as though that might be the direction of travel, is where instead of trying to identify what not to trust, you flip it and look at what should one trust online. That's one reflection I've been thinking about for some time. What you spoke about, your question on what does this mean for safe harbor, right? There's a couple of things. one, the way the obligations are currently framed, it's not limited to identifying harmful synthetic media. In fact, it's in some sense an obligation to verify everything, right? And this really flips the notion of what it means to be an intermediary, something which is, and we are increasingly seeing this. There's a lot of push to do more proactive compliance to retain safe harbor. And Maheshwari sir, to your point, I think one of the reasons for that is everything that we have tried to do in terms of greater platform accountability, everything links back to safe harbor. It's because that's an easy site for using the IT rules as a mechanism to keep quickly iterating, which I appreciate the challenge. You want to be able to quickly iterate. But by doing so and everything linking back to safe harbor is one of the challenges, and why I think that framework needs reimagination. And why I say this is, I mean, and at a forum like, you know, and an internet governance forum, if we don't talk about this, Debayan, you spoke about incentives, right? The risk of skewing incentives is so great, like you said. For platforms, the obvious response is to then start labeling everything or going over cautious and taking down things that they don't necessarily need to. And here I'm speaking as a user, right? Like, as a user, you're always straddled somewhere between platforms and governments on one hand, and who is really looking out for your best interests, right? And unless those incentives are aligned, and what courts have, interpreting our constitutional right to speech, etc., have said platforms must respond to a notice and takedown regime. Let's establish what notice looks like, and what your response to a valid legal notice needs to be. But expecting platforms to make determinations of lawfulness or to proactively look at every piece of content on the internet, neither of those are good solutions and will result in negative outcomes for us as users. So I'll leave it at that at this point.
Thank you, Aman. That was great. I now move to my next panelist, Johan. Johan, my question to you is, what kind of measures can be taken by AI tool developers and deployers to ensure AI-generated content remains trustworthy and transparent for users? Over to you, Johan. Johan, you're muted. Can you please unmute yourself? Thank you. No, we can't hear you. Some audio issue, I think. You're still muted, Johan. Yeah. Thank you. No, we lost you again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So I think definitely, I think what Rakesh said that, the laws need to be stringent penalties on people who, misuse the system is definitely something that I would vouch for. Even though, I come from a background of from a founder startup kind of aspect from a business. I think it's important to give the users, authentic and realistic kind of information. At the same time, taking what I'm also mentioned, that we should not actually just have that label per se, but make the keep the onus with the people who are building systems to make sure that they validate, they ensure transparency of all the content that they provide, and not, I would say, satellite the common man or the common user who's taking a photograph or trying to improve his LinkedIn profile or whatever. But I think it is important to keep the authenticity of the bigger programs in check so that there is no over misuse. Like there was an interesting anecdote that I shared with when I attended an NASCOM some many years ago, where there's this company, I don't mention all the names, but there was this company who was into space, space kind of aircraft, things like that. And he gave a very interesting point about how his CEO came to him and said, I want to build a spaceship that can go into space and come back, and to be reused multiple times. And interesting thing to that was that I don't know how to build it. I don't have a team who knows how to build it. So let's do a competition. And he opened this competition worldwide. And sure enough, there was somebody who built it and won that prize. He got the IP, and there he had his spaceship. So I'm just saying, while we want to address this, we know this is a big challenge. We know that technology is 2 steps behind. So throw it over to all the great brains out there, 1.4 billion people here in India. Open it worldwide, for heaven's sake. But let them provide a solution. Implement that as a check and balance of all contenders. And we might get at least close. We may not solve everything, but we get pretty close.
Thank you. Thank you, Johan. Excellent food for thought. Talking about technology solutions, I would now go to Dr. Debayan Gupta for my next question. Dr. Gupta, what innovative approaches do you foresee for building trust in synthetic media? We are now circling back to the title of the workshop itself, which is building trust in synthetic media. This is one part of the question. The second part is, how can research or academia and industry collaborate on such technologies to ensure content authenticity without stifling creative use of AI? Over to you.
So, regarding trust in synthetic data, I mean, I assume that, if I know data is synthetic, what are we talking about in terms of trust? Are we saying that this is responsibly generated in some sense, that, it has the trappings that we require, it has the proper provenance, and so on and so forth? I think we kind of already have the tools to do that. What we need, and I'm going to use a much dreaded term, is stakeholder alignment, so to speak. Right. I was thinking of what Aman had said a little while ago about, let's focus, or let's not worry so much about the fake stuff, let's get the real stuff provenanced correctly. And what that reminded me of immediately is, and this is also something I've been thinking about for a while, I don't know how many of you remember, 2024, I think in March, Princess Catherine, it was called Kategate in the United Kingdom. She put out a photograph of herself along with 3 of her children, and this went through some major firm, right, Getty or whatever, and the palace put it out and so on. It turned out immediately, ground level people spotted that, wait a minute, her fingers a little bit bent oddly or whatever, and you have the wrong number of buttons on the jacket because somebody looked up the jacket online and where it's sold and so on and so forth. And it was AI edited, right? And it caused a huge furor at the time, right? Because the British love their royals or whatever. But the problem is that if you think about it, what are we really afraid of? When we're defining the stuff, it's really important to create a threat model, right? Because I always like to joke that a gun won't protect you against COVID and the PP suit won't protect you against a burglar, right? So what are we afraid of? Are we afraid of some random person who's made a caricature of, I don't know, Modi and Rahul Gandhi dancing together? I mean, no, we do not care, right? What we care about is the evil individual who's putting out something problematic to try and incite a riot, right? That is what we're really after. The problem is that person, he or she, they're going to make sure to fake things correctly, right? All of these approaches that we're taking are just an attempt to make it harder for them to fake it, so that they have to work harder, to make it more expensive for them to fake it. The problem is AI has made so many different things so cheap, right? Before making a fake video took so many resources, now it costs nothing, right? I can write a novel in 30 seconds. So it has changed the economics of the situation, which makes it harder to prevent those negative activities. In my opinion, the best options that we have right now to build trust in content in general, both synthetic and real, is probably a combination of some types of watermarking, invisible ones, please, combined with, I think X, for example, has done some of this. Some other platforms are also doing it, which is some amount of community plus fact checker notes. Right. So Meta had been following the fact checker guide stuff. The government had also talked about having this fact checking bureau, which kind of happened but didn't happen, but did happen, that sort of thing. So I think some combination of universal crowdsourced checking along with LLM checking, along with some amount of expert checking is probably the right way to go. People have done research on this. There's a lot of clever people doing this stuff. And very honestly, I think it's a matter of time until we get it done. Like this is, I'm not that worried about it.
Thank you, Devan. That was very interesting. My last panelist, Mr. Prasoon Srivastava. Sir, I would like to ask you, what strategies in your experience could be most effective in rebuilding audience trust in the online content ecosystem as it is evolving with the increasing use of AI? For example, do you advocate for transparent fact-checking, better digital literacy for the public, or perhaps a code of ethics for journalists, specifically addressing misinformation and synthetic media? Prasoonji,
yeah.
over to you.
So in online media, I told you that labeling will help a great deal. If labeling comes up, it will help in verifying the information. And if you talk about the rule and other things, I think there's no right or wrong view. If you see the synthetic media generated for political rallies, for education purposes, so everything has got different perspective. So building trust when it comes to online space, labeling is one part. The other thing, who's going to follow the law? And law has to be properly implemented. There are enough rules and framework in place, but most of them are not implemented properly. And if you see the civil society part, civil society only exists, in my view, is in theories. It is only said that a civil society representative were there, but they are often backed by the corporates. If you see, there have been so many researchers on radiation, they have been also been under controversy. Who is funding those researches? So that is why I said there should be multi-stakeholder body where an utopia body, utopia fund exists to support these kind of voices. Even government is a stakeholder. We have seen images coming up by various government agencies which are AI generated, and they claim that this is an AI generated image, and there is no labeling on those images. So when student or anyone who takes up those images, they will think that it is real ones. But when it goes to online, when you upload, there are frame by frame analysis that can be done, and immediately it can be labeled that if it is a synthetically generated, edited, or it's a for real image.
Yeah. Thank you, Prasoonji. Thank you. I think we're just about few minutes left. I'd like to throw the floor open because we are done with our panel questions. I'd like to throw the floor open for any audience questions, if any. Please feel free. The gentleman here needs a mic.
Yeah, good afternoon. It has been nice to look at the discussions on the trust in the synthetic media, or to some extent real media also. And what I could gather is actually the way forward or to building up is through labeling and watermarking. So my specific question is on the labeling and water marking. Do we have some systems available? how do you ensure that they themselves are authentic and they're traceable to the originality?
Hi. So again, there are two sides to this. First, yes, we have some good systems to create invisible watermarks and so on. But again, like I said, someone who is malicious will do things like change the resolution, take a photo of the photo with some other device and mess around with it. These are removable, right? All these things can do is can make it harder and harder and harder, right? Now, keep in mind that the opposite can also happen, and we have seen this in history, right? What do I mean by the opposite? That when there's a real video out, someone will claim, no, that this is AI because it's showing me doing something embarrassing, right? So Isaac Newton and Robert Hooke famously did this, right? Newton would pay off booksellers and he would write letters insulting Hooke's mother or whatever and say that, oh, it wasn't me, it was somebody faking my letters, right? So this gives politicians and other people a new avenue that even real things, they will take their own real video, modify it a bit so the watermark is there and release it themselves and say that, look, it's clearly AI generated. So, I mean, look, a lot of this nonsense is going to happen. There's nothing we can do about it. At the end of the day, a more awakened society, along with some set of laws that make bad behavior a little bit harder to do. That's probably the best thing we can hope for.
Anybody else on the panel who would like to answer? Okay. So, any other questions from the audience? We probably can take one more if at all there is one. Otherwise, I think it's time that we say thank you to our esteemed panel. Okay, so we'd like to all assemble in front of the. Devayan, I think next time you come, you should probably generate a tool for this so that we can have the photograph even before the panel starts.
Then you will have a 10% declaration also.
Yeah. And I would request for this group photograph, Johan to stay. Yeah, Johan to stay there so that we'll take the photograph along with you on the virtual link. Please stay put. Thank you. Whatever. Yeah, we can all stand. Shall we all stand here?
This reminds me of school.
My God.
What do we look at?
Thank you.
Okay, so we just have a small memento which would be presented from India. I just to make you announce kar rahi hu. So, okay.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you so
yes,
much.
To Mr. Maheshwari. To Mr. Dibayan Gupta, Dr. Dibayan Gupta, sorry. Mr. Aman Taneja. Mr. Prasoon Srivastava. Johan, there's a certificate for you as well for participating. We'll get it sent to you. And of course, Mr. Devashish Bhattacharya, yes, the moderator, Broadband India Forum. Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah. The next workshop 7 here, the one on green data centers. Can we have you guys set up here, please?
I asked you a question. Should I be a part of the standing committee or the sitting committee? No, so it depends. They said we take a photograph with the moderator. I said, yeah, do you want us to be a part of the standing committee or the sitting committee? Amit sir, you should also join. No, he was taking Oh, we didn't realize that you were going to take a selfie.
I don't know how to take a
Please stop, please stop. Sir, please stop. Please. Arun, please, Arun, you are part of the organizing committee. Please join. Don't worry, we'll not do a Princess Catherine.
बंदा खर्च नहीं करता था, कहता था मेरा रोल इतना ही, प्रोड्यूसर वाले में तो पॉसिबल है।
नाम चेंज कर I hope I made up for not as a आप मुझे पूछ रहे हैं कि कोई ऑनलाइन ज्वाइन करेगा नाम बता दो
ये इधर रहेंगे ना, ये उस तरफ मॉडरेटर सेंटर पे रहते हैं, यहाँ बैठेंगे लेफ्ट हो गया राइट हो गया।
I met him in January at a conference. We spoke about golf and I'm just starting out. I'm like very new to the sport. I'm going to hold this against him. And by the way, it's Mr. What next time when you're on the plane, someone will say, there is a doctor. I love it.
I've not been difficult to get. On Sunday, weekend and weekends.
So busy.
No, because they can't play over the weekend. Either they are intermittent or they are always.
So what I do is very simple. Great, sir. Good. Yes, absolutely. And for a lot of these things, just pick a random topic. It doesn't cost us very much. Cost us the cost of this. We bring together 5-7 people. We do a team thing. We write down. We write down the discussion classification.
And a notepad.
Some further deep dives on it. And we've had some
Taken it away.
interesting
Writing which
Yeah,
paper?
just a second.
Right now there's a very major conference called ICL, International Conference on Learning Representation, where some of that stuff is submitting as a paper. So, like,
Thank you. That's it.
we've been very lucky to get some.
This is also, I guess, you write them?
Yes, I did.
You'll enjoy the discussions.
Can you change these? बोल दो ये तो नहीं है, जिस इसमें लिखा है उसको चेंज
My favorite
this roastery. It is by the strangely named India South Indian Association. So they have 10 branches, one in Finland, but there's one that just opened in Malvinagar. The Finland one will probably go just opened in August. In the market? No. Inside the market. Aldo. Servo, नहीं, separate servo पे हमें अपने अलग side में कुछ अलग वाला है. It's called roastery. I am telling you, you will not regret it. Every item is good, every drink is good, everything is good. I am not affiliated to it, just go. Enjoy. After you go, you have food there, you will come next. I live in that area. God, it's too far. I go about 2 days a week. So my teaching load is only about 15% of my time. Most of my time is research. My students are all over the place. So right now only one student, there are some students who are sitting in UK, some in US, some in Japan. I kept the affiliation. So I taught them.
You're joining?
Very boring reasons. Usually only chairs. But I also I don't want to live in a country where I am not a citizen. At least we have directly very old-fashioned opinion.
In that direction. It would be a good thing to.
I am privileged enough to be able to say that it doesn't matter from a monetary. Like I'm not going to die starving. यहाँ भी सब कुछ तो पैसा मिल जाता है. Obviously there is a payment that
And flows have all been discussed before. Handling policies would be before now we do the
No, he's just retired. So he was in ITC for many years. He retired in Capital Virginia. So he was head of taxation.
Hello everyone, could we clear the room, sirs? Just also you could be seated here. Devu sir? Hello everyone, we are about to start the next session. It's called Green Data Centers as the Champions of Sustainable Internet. We have all the speakers here. Okay, should we start?
I called him.
And it's your responsibility.
We'll catch up. There have been quite a we're looking forward to it. We haven't given up. All the best.
Thank you.
Check. Hello.
Yeah, I have joined online.
Hello.
that.
Hello. Hello.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kumar Nihal from Change Advisors. We are delighted to welcome you to today's panel session on green data centers at Champions of Sustainable Internet, organized under the India Internet Governance Forum 2025 in collaboration with Change Advisors. The Internet Governance Forum convened by the UN is one of the largest multi-stakeholder platform on internet-related public policy issues. The India IGF, established in 2021, is a key national initiative. The 2025 edition is special as it coincides with the 10-year of Digital India. Change Advisors is proud to support this effort as one of the Asia-Pacific region's leading public policy research and consulting firm across areas like technology, fintech, infrastructure, life sciences, and sustainability. Today's areas of discussion falls under the IIGF 2025 sub-theme, Building Digital Infrastructure for Resilient and Sustainable Growth. The role of data centers in powering the internet has never been more critical. India's data center industry is witnessing rapid expansion driven by AI, rising data consumption, cloud adoption, and data localization. In many ways, data centers are the hidden factories of our digital age. Their expansion will have a strong multiplier effect on India's economy, generating demand across IT, engineering, construction, logistics, and creating high-skilled jobs. For India, building domestic data center capacity is not only a technological priority, but also a geostrategic imperative, given the importance of digital infrastructure for economic and national security. Policy focus on the sector is also increasing. The National Data Center Policy 2025 is expected very soon, and several states including Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka have already taken the lead with supportive policies. According to a few reports, India is on track to become the second largest data center market globally, reflecting the scale of upcoming growth. However, this growth comes with a sustainability challenge. For instance, electricity demand from data center in the Asia-Pacific region is projected to rise sharply, outpacing countries like Japan and Australia. Sustainability for data centers spans multiple dimensions: the source and supply of power, the design efficiency of hardware, smarter use of energy, and natural resources like water, optimal real estate and cooling solutions. We will discuss the issues relevant to making data centers green in the panel discussion. The session will be moderated by Spriha Pandey, Senior Manager at Change Advisors. We look forward to an engaging conversation, and we will open the floor for audience questions at the very end. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And before I begin, I'd also like to thank my colleague for the context setting, which has laid the foundation for the conversation that we will be having. To set the stage, I would like to take a moment and introduce the panel that we have with us today. First, we have Dr. Ritu Mathur. She is Senior Fellow and Director at TERI, where she leads the work on climate and energy policy. With more than 3 decades of experience, Dr. Mathur has played an influential role in shaping India's climate strategy, contributing to the country's NDC and the broader energy transition planning. Joining her is Mr. Pakshi Mahendru, Director for Intel Government Affairs for India. With nearly 20 years of experience across policy advocacy, government affairs, CSR, and research, she brings a deep insight into how technology innovation and policy can advance sustainable digital infrastructure. We are also joined by Mr. Sudipto Banerjee, Deputy Director at NASSCOM, where he leads advocacy across data centers, AI governance, digital markets, and workforce-related ease of doing business issues. We also have joining online Mr. Jitesh Karlekar, Director of Research for Data Center at JLL, who covers the wider APAC region. He brings a data-driven perspective on infrastructure trends, investment priorities, and sustainability practices shaping the future of data center development. We also have one more panelist with us who is running a little late, so apologies on his behalf. He is Mr. Abhishek Bhatt, Secretary General of Bharat Digital Infrastructure Association and alumnus of IIT Kharagpur. He comes with over 25 years of experience across IT services globally. So thank you all for joining us today. And as we know, India's digital economy is expanding rapidly, and this growth is being driven by increasing consumption of OTT, AI workload, and also cloud adoption. And while all of this is creating an unprecedented demand for data centers, it remains inherently resource extensive. It uses a lot of electricity, land, water, and material. So with that context, this is an open question for all the panelists. In the Indian context, what should be the characteristic of a truly green data center? And this is beyond the conventional focus on energy efficiency. So Dr. Mathur, should we begin with you? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so again, just coming from a energy economist kind of a background and looking at the space of where India is poised to go forward, both in terms of Viksit Bharat and in terms of looking at decarbonization and net zero. When I talk of green and think of green, to me it's become more than a narrow, clean energy concept to something which is a little bit more encompassing in terms of the whole ecosystem being something which drives growth and gives you more value add with much less energy and much less damage to resources and environment. So with that kind of a contextualization, green in data centers would go much beyond just looking at renewable energy, looking at what kind of supply of energy do you provide to the data centers, but also the whole system within the logistics to support it with storage and also with on-site renewables, but at the same time also encompassing things like embodied energy within the whole setup. That said, again, extending to resources, you need to also look at how the water and land resources get impacted, and I would bring that also into the realm of green. When I mentioned the economic part of it, again, I think when you get more bang for the buck, again, I would say that is green. So data centers as a way of driving growth, I think is an important conceptualization. And when we talk about the Make in Indias, or talk about energy security, or talk about any of the other security related aspects, we can again also talk about siting data centers within the country or outside. Right? So again, to me, I think if I look at the overall arena of where we need to go in the long term, I would say we need to think about positioning data centers internally, but at the same time think about how to do this sustainably, and therefore the green aspect becomes extremely important to think about. At this point, I'll stop with that.
Akshi, we can have you go next on this, maybe?
Thank you, Spriya, for having me here, and I'll build on to where Dr. Mathur left off. Completely in agreement, and I don't think so any of us in the room would disagree that we need to invest in data centers as a lever of economic growth. Today, and while the fact is widely contested, we say that 30% of India generates almost 30% of the global data. India houses a mere 3% of the global data centers. And somewhere, even if you were to take a final look at the 3%, that 3% is clustered in just a couple of states, and not even a couple of states, just a couple of sites, which means the resource strain on those sites or resource strain on those states is immense, and it is just going to get further worse, because picking up on the sustainability thread where Nihal left from the opening remarks also, right? We don't really have one common policy that really marries the conversation on what sustainability should look like. And increasingly, and it's the same as AI, it's the same as emerging tech, it's the same as sustainability, we no longer can look at this, that if this is sustainability, this is the matter that energy should look into. If it is sustainability, or if it is AI, it's only IT that should look into it. If it is emerging technologies, those lines are really getting dimmer by the day. And from that lens, why I bring that is, when we look at a data center and sustainability, very often we talk about the natural resources. But increasingly, we also need to look at the interaction between IT equipment that is housed in the data center with the environment that is constructed and how that environment is constructed to get the most out of the data center, right? And while you mentioned that, let's not look into the power unit efficiencies, I would say that's still very important, because especially if we look at the colder regions of the world where a lot of data centers are, the PUEs have constantly come down from what traditionally was at about a 1.8, 1.9 to about 1.2, 1.3. But the data centers that we're talking about today, and I should ideally quote a source, but I'm not quoting a source here because I don't remember it, is also that a lot of Indian data centers are hovering between 1.4 and 1.6. That's almost a 20-30% additional energy, and energy not saved is energy lost. It will reflect in OPEX, it will reflect in carbon footprint, it would reflect even in how fast your machine ages. I think another realm, and I will stop with that, is when we talk about the useful life of IT equipment, it plays a huge role on how soon you have to replace it. All said and done, the e-waste that comes out of a data center is also a strain on the environment. The more prolonged we can have the life of the hardware that is there, the more value or the more bang for the buck we can get out of the equipment that is there, the more we would really be able to elongate and, for that matter, look at the cost or the return on investment more holistically. I'll pause there.
Yeah, thanks for getting me here. I think Ritu and Dipakshi have already spoken whatever I wanted to speak, so let me just try to repackage what they have already spoken, because obviously I have to speak something. So I think the way I look at the concept of green data centers, I would like to break it down into three broad buckets. One is obviously the input side, the source of energy that we're using. And I totally agree with the way the question has been framed, because power usage efficiency is a relevant factor, but can't be the sole factor. It's almost like judging the efficiency of that building just by looking at the electricity bill. So, and especially in the Indian context, where 75% of the energy is still being generated through thermal. So let's say a situation where a data center which has 1.5 PUE and is using 100% renewable energy is more efficient than a data center which has 1.3 PUE but using 75% of non-renewable energy. So, I mean, the PUE can't be the sole factor. Having said that, we need to increase the offtake of the renewable energy in India, and there are several problems. There are regulatory issues, there are technical issues, and because the game actually happens at the state level. So, whether the central government has the authority to make rules, because the electricity comes in the concurrent subject, but because of the statewide variations, when it comes to adoption of renewable energy, it becomes a very complex matter. That is the one that is on the input source. Coming to the second is on the building, the real estate, if I may use that word in a loose sense. Now, data center infrastructures are specialized infrastructure. It's almost like building an airport. I mean, an airport cannot be repurposed for a hotel accommodation. It can only be used, so a data center can only be used as a data center. And so far, most of the data centers India has are the legacy data centers. Now, it's a huge opportunity for India. As Dipakshi rightly pointed out, the kind of data we are generating, we hardly have the capacity as of now. So data centers are not going anywhere, despite some of the negative externalities it has on the society. And how do we actually start thinking at the ab initio level? How do we create a structure which is going to be there for 10, 15 years, which is forward-looking, which is future-proof? So on that count, we need to completely reboot our thinking when it comes to building that infrastructure. And finally, coming on to the output stage, I think both the panelists have already touched upon that. On the heat that you are generating, I'm getting into a bit of specifics. If a data center which is using renewable energy, but it is finally at the end of the day, it is not using the heat which is being generated, it can't be called as a green data center. Maybe we can call it as a less of a brown data center. So, and a lot of emerging technologies are there. There is it's called as immersion cooling. Then there is radiant cooling. Infosys has done some experimentation, I think way back in 2009 in Hyderabad, one of their offices. Then there is absorption chillers. But these are all at a very in an infancy stage. So I was speaking to someone who is in the business of immersion cooling, and he was telling me that there is less than 1% adoption in India. And it's not easy, because even the hardware components which are used for immersion cooling needs to be of a special characteristic. They needs to be of much denser quality to be used for immersion cooling. Also, India receives so much of rainfall. Now, there are plenty of, statistics that we are not good at reusing this. We are not good at the rainwater harvesting, which could be used in the context of data centers as well. And and one of the important component of the output is also the e-waste. Now, we are aiming at 9 gigawatt by 2030, which means more use of hardware components. And given the AI data centers coming up in India, we'll get to have an AI data center in India. But there's a work in progress. The periodicity of upgrading the infrastructure will also increase. So very quickly we will keep on upgrading the infrastructure, which means more e-waste being generated. So how are we planning for that? And finally, I would say the micro environment. Before I was stepping into this panel discussion, someone just read out, Guardian is carrying a news where it says the Mumbai families are traumatized by AI, by data centers. So I think it also, one is obviously one physical, tangible impact, and also it creates a bad optics for the data center ecosystem if we don't think about all these micro as well as macro component which goes into creating this concept of data center. So I'll stop here. Thanks.
Thank you. Can we have Mr. Jitesh, your inputs on the question, please?
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me for the conference. So, since most of the topics have been covered, I would like to slightly digress from the common discussion and define green data centers in one different context. What I feel is that from a first principle point of view, anything that you take from a nature, giving back is going to take more effort. So when we talk about a net zero goals or other things, we have to be mindful of the factors or the points which we have to take into account is how low less damage you can do to the environment, and to just give a fact of these numbers that kind of there, that Indian data center industry has grown up from 350 megawatt in 2019 to 1123 megawatt as of June 2025. Now that has been a huge growth of the market. Second is India is the second largest mobile user market globally. We are if you look after US and China, we are the third largest economy, not only in terms of the size of the sheer size, but also in terms of the kind of digital output that we are growing, the kind which also, mind you, forms the base of the AI revolution that is coming. Because the more the data you generate, the more intelligence you are generating, and that forms the basis of this thing. So it's a fact that you can't shy away from the fact that the world is moving to a new economy, which is the digital economy, right? So after maybe the industrial age and the service sector, it's the digital age that is going to encompass the whole world. And when you look in comparison, where US has something like 18 gigawatt of capacity, China has somewhere around 4 to 5 gigawatt of capacity, we are just at 1 gigawatt. And see, with energy, with green data centers, or whenever we talk about sustainability, the first and most important topic is energy. And what is directly addressable is the energy that we consume. Now, when we say about data centers being consuming a lot of power, we often ignore the fact that the residential housing segment is the largest power consumer in our industry. In any, if you look at the entire power consumption cycle chart, the residential part happens to be the largest consumer. And then we never talked about that coming from a fossil fuel, while as when it comes to an industry specific like a data center, there's too much of a talk about the fossil fuel. But if you look at the factors, in India, currently almost 50% of your energy is getting generated from renewable energy, which is a very good step that we are taking in terms of making our dependence less on fossil fuels. When you look at from a holistic perspective, the benefits that the data center industry is going to give to a digital economy and to the country as a whole, the saving on various resources, the kind of efficiency saving it is generating on other aspects of it, are often not quantified. Having said that, I feel that energy, the power consumption is going to be the basic factor. And whether you talk about all other factors, the power is the main thing because that is what drives a data center, right? So from that perspective, the nucleus of this entire green data center energy will start from the power consumption and end with the power consumption. The more better power consumption that we come to account for, the better the industry is moving. And as Mukherjee said that the India has a legacy of data centers. Like the first data center started somewhere around 2000, and then a spate of new data centers came after 2014-15. So obviously the legacy data centers have a lower PUE, but all the new data centers that which we are tracking. So right now, roughly around 950 megawatt of data centers are likely to come up in next 2.5 years. All these data centers are AI ready, and they are looking at a design efficiency of 1.3 to 1.2. So obviously the industry is moving that from that perspective. And also I feel that a lot of the data centers are following the sustainable practices. So maybe I won't say that the green data center is not a point of achievement, it's a work in progress. And that not only India, but every country is trying to reach this target in its own way.
Thank you for those inputs, Jitesh. Thank you, Abhishek, for joining us. We were just going over the first, common question for the panel. So, in the Indian context, what should be the characteristic or the defining features for a green data center? But we are also trying to sort of expand our horizon beyond the conventional energy efficiency and the points that correlate to those. So, would like to hear your thoughts on that, please.
Hi, thank you. I'm Abhishek Bhatt. I'm Secretary General of Bharat Digital Infrastructure Association. One advantage of joining late is you get to hear everybody's perspective. So thank you, all of you have thrown out your numbers, so I don't have to reiterate the same thing. Green hona chahiye, heat paida karta hai, Guardian News. So thanks for covering all that. So incidentally, I was doing just a mathematical calculation. That's why I asked this note. I was bringing it continuously. All of us hold, let's just break data center into simple as a compute device, a storage device. So in a way, even our mobile is a very miniaturized version of data center. Something gets stored here, something gets processed here. There are 140 crore people living in India. What is the heat generated from a mobile? We are talking about green. Na? What is the heat generated from mobile? Anybody? Any guesses? We Google it, ChatGPT it. It is approximately 2 to 3 watts. 2 to 3 watts into 142 works out to 3,000 megawatt, and the numbers thrown for data center was what? 350 megawatt, and going up to 1 gigawatt. So already the phone that we are holding in our hands is already emitting energy 3 times of whatever data center we are talking about. So let me demystify these numbers. ठीक है, हम लोग कई बार we get fixated by media news and all that. So green, when we say, it has to be looked at in a more holistic context, and every country will evolve these solutions on its own. I'll give another connotation, plastic. So in late 1970s, when Tupperware came into being, it was a fad having plastic bottles. We all were buying a lot of plastics, but it led to a lot of pollution, and we all started talking anti-plastic, and solutions came. Here I foresee it will take a different turn altogether. It won't be happening this way कि solar cell lag jaye ya wo lag jaye. I personally feel that the way the compute grows, doubles at every 18 months, similarly innovations will happen which will reduce power consumption. Just an example of bulb, then tube light, then LEDs. So something of that sort will be happening here also. It is just a matter of priority and focus, and the greening will happen on a totality basis. It can't be just segmented on a data center only. Of course, all the nice steps being taken, they are very well, they do add to it. But these are few interesting numbers. These are hardcore numbers. You don't have to do really a lot of mathematics into it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Dipakshi, I would like to go back to you. You made a very good point about not having a single policy that sort of marries all of it, and that is a conversation we'll revisit. But you also made another point on the life of the equipment. So, could you talk about some innovations that sort of have the potential to reduce the environmental footprint of data centers? Or maybe, in keeping with the breadth of the argument that you raised, have the potential to raise the life of the equipment?
So again, very valid points, Abhishek, and I will actually start from where you ended, right? When we talk about the equipment and the ways compute is really bringing down the power consumption. If I just look at the last decade, pretty much with that every 18 months to 24-month cycle, and I'm just talking about basic processors here. Every single time, and I'm not just talking about the company I represent, I'm talking about almost every strong processor company on board, is able to reduce power consumption to the range of 20 to 28%, right? 15% every year actually gives us almost double the number. That's the golden ratio. Increasingly, what is also happening is that, and again, I'm straying just for 30 seconds because when we talk about compute, when we talk about AI, there's a lot of focus that it needs a data center for it to get processed. And that is where there's also a lot of dependence on just bringing up data centers. Increasingly, there is also different form factors that are coming into fray, right? Mobiles is definitely one example, but increasingly you will also see the emergence of AI PCs coming into the conversation. And these are the PCs that don't need to connect with the data center, but one, they of course are more energy efficient because you're doing it at a much smaller scale. They are more affordable, so immediately you're able to increase that access, let's say for students or for smaller entrepreneurs, etc. But at the same point in time, AI PCs also let you not just engage with LLMs, but also create content, something that mobiles would not allow you to in the shorter run. Coming to your question more directly about, when we talk about the different innovations. Again, if we were to look at the rise of GPUs, because of which we are here when we talk about AI, GPUs have been there for the longest time ever, but it is just that how we are using it has been an unlock in the last 7 to 8 years, the last 4 to 5 years more prominently. Today, if you look at it, it's a very wide mix of technologies that go into any particular computing load. And again, I'm not a technologist, so I'm going to really speak it the way I understand it as a layperson. When you look at any model, any regular AI model, majority of your GPUs, which are also the energy guzzlers, they go into the inferencing aspect of modeling. When it comes to data training, when it comes to data storage, a lot of that grunt work continues to be done by CPUs, and almost about a 65 to 68%, therefore, of an enablement typically ends up being a CPU, but something that we don't focus on. So it's kind of power that is sitting, it's kind of computational ability that is sitting, but you're not really unlocking it to what it can do. Then you have NPUs, the neural processing units, which power things that are just at the edge, and they really help you with smaller inferencing loads. Since you talk about innovations, I'm a very strong believer, increasingly the innovations is really going to come from optimization of different technologies. Right now when we look at, and this is, again, there are a lot of global studies over just the last 2 to 3 years that talk about this. Why? When we know that GPUs are going to be energy guzzlers, and they are beautiful technology, right? You can't have AI without GPUs, or at least you can't have mass scale AI without GPUs. You don't need GPUs to run the small inferencings that otherwise are anything under 10 to the power 25, right? When you talk about, or when you look at the optimization of technology, increasingly CPUs and GPUs are being worked together. And already there are innovations in optimization of these technologies which have been able to bring down the power consumption from 100 to about 67. And this is just the beginning. I'm just talking about the last 2 to 3 years, right? Linking it to the policies, and I will be very candid here. When we look at, therefore, the India AI mission, and when we look at the India AI story, we're only focusing on GPUs. A DeepSeek did not come out of China based on the latest GPUs. It actually came out of innovation, which was about running strong workloads based on either older technology or different technology, that was CPUs and NPUs. And when we talk about building resilience, that resilience is not just in terms of supply chains, that resilience is also in terms of dependence on energy, dependence on cost. Today, if we just talk about a data center that is a large data center, like Sudipto mentioned, India doesn't yet have an AI data center, but if you were to look at a pure data center that is only a GPU data center, and you were to then mix these technologies and see where the cost optimizations would be, it's almost at a 1/3 right now, right? And again, not everything needs to be an LLM that runs. Many times the small language models are actually more accurate just because the data quality is better, just because the data that is enriching it is better. So increasingly when we look at even the academia, and as Intel we engage a lot with academia, the questions and the hypotheses that are being raised is, one, do I really need an LLM? Can I do it with an SLM? Direct impact on the energy consumption of the models. Second question increasingly is being asked is, okay, if it's just about optimization of technology at the back end, can I actually use CPUs to make the machine and NPUs to make the machines more intelligent so that I can use my GPUs better? So where I needed 10 GPUs, I might just need 3 GPUs. And within that, I'm also creating this insulation from just focus currently from where India is on technology that could at any point in time come under export controls, right? And to the last point, and I know I've taken a lot of time, so I'll just close that in just a minute. When you refer about elongating the lifespan of a machine, increasingly again, especially when you talk about the data center players, especially when you talk about the OEMs and the platforms that go into it, they're looking at the interaction between electricity sources, cooling mechanisms, and the impact on the hardware. So while, like, and again, Sudipto mentioned immersion cooling, the different alternate styles of cooling. Today, we're also looking at using only recycled water for cooling. And there are data centers, and there's an Intel data center in the US, in Santa Clara, that over the last 10 years alone has saved about $11 billion. The machine or the equipment that is going into that data center, it's very modular in terms of what you're changing, and it is very conscious of the e-waste it is generating. Again, one size cannot fit all, and which is why, while I've spoken a lot about the optimization, the central point is we don't consider workloads, which is why we are really talking also about energy consumption. At times the workloads would also determine that you don't need energy guzzlers every time.
Thank you for that. It was very insightful. So just building on this, Dr. Mathur, we've heard the Pakshi talk about innovations that focus on improving resource efficiency. So based off your experience, what do you see as the critical sustainability challenges that may come out of this?
So I think one of the things we see in, we do these long-term projections all the time. I think one of the most critical things for long-term forecasting and planning also becomes being able to see where you might land in the future. I think the ability to understand with all these innovations, with all the demands, with all the changes, where might you see electricity demand going? We see numbers all over the place in terms of, the needs could be that high or that low, and matching your planning for, say, electricity generation through renewables is a big deal if the numbers are all over the place. So I think also being able to get a good handle on what your requirements are and being able to do that short-term and long-term planning so that we do not lock ourselves into, say, coal-based generation, overestimating the needs right now, and also in terms of falling short of renewables on the other hand at some point in time, and therefore needing to resort to diesel-based gensets at some point in time. So again, I mean, if you have to look at sustainability as a whole, you need to be able to put a tack, and a good tack, on where you are likely to land in terms of your requirements of energy from the data centers and things. So I think, again, knowing what kind of innovations can come in place, knowing what each of these technologies like waste heat recovery or closed loop water cooling systems, etc., could do, all of that becomes extremely important. And again, therefore, it is not about a particular streamlined system that we are talking about, but a very holistic understanding of an ecosystem where you need to be able to understand what all can be done to achieve what kind of saving at what point in time. I think we need roadmaps rather than just needing to know what all exists. So I think that is something which needs to start coming together, and there I think, again, data systems is an important thing to have. We do not have good databases, we do not have open databases, and which is why numbers always are all over the place. So that's one. Also in terms of a challenge in terms of sustainability comes in terms of again looking at how you recycle or what kind of reuse you have, the life aspect that you talked about again. So what are we doing with regards to land use change? Can we really look at that? So the realm of the domains that we are talking about, again, as I think some of our panelists mentioned, these are getting blurred, but I think, again, the need for people from various domains to sit together, to have conversations across the board, to be able to link one kind of challenge to another and come with mutually resolvable ways of working forward is, I think, the other big challenge, which I think is a need of the hour at this point in time. So I'll stop with that.
Thank you, Dr. Mathur. This brings me to you, Abhishek. Dr. Mathur has spoken about the need for a roadmap. So how do you see the industry gearing up to meet these expectations? And also there's a lot going on around renewable energy sourcing and circularity in general. So would like to hear you speak on industry perspectives.
Thank you. Firstly, let me thank Dr. Mathur for using the word open database. That is very close to my heart. In fact, any open loop system is what we should be gunning for. Thanks a lot. I didn't expect this word coming from you. Second, the second to answer on the circularity part and the aspects. So in the first instance, I just gave you certain numbers of how numbers can be really interesting. I'll give you another interesting thing. So I was in one of the planning meetings, and the whole concept was, how do we take India from X gigawatt to, the answer will be in this only, to 9 gigawatt by 2030. And in one of those meetings, I found a very interesting technology. It was being made by someone, a digital technology, which could read all the data points, which means river ka flow kaise change hoga when jab interlinking karenge, wind direction kaise change hoga, inclination of earth, the rotation speed of earth, all the data points that we can imagine under the sun. And interestingly, there is one more aspect called power purchase agreement. All of you who are in the data center business must be aware of. That is a price that we lock for 10, 20, a very long term. So if we are locking a power purchase agreement for building a data center at X price today, and innovation brings it to X by 5, the whole data center collapses, the business collapses. So the solution to the circularity and many of these things will come from data only, which will reside in a data center. So give time to data center, all these solutions will automatically come. Thanks.
Shudipto, this brings me to you. So what do you see as some of the key barriers, these could be technical or regulatory or financial, that are a hindrance in scaling green data center practices across the country?
Yeah, I think first I really liked the line which Jitesh mentioned, said in his intervention, that green data center is actually a work in progress. I think it's almost like many of us might aspire to eat 100% organic, but I think if we get to eat vegetables and fruits which are less processed and less subject to pesticides, I think that itself would be a great incremental progress in the way we are eating. So I think same in the data center. I'll just, maybe I'll use the data center policy which India is working on, the Ministry of Electronics is working on. I think, see, there are many expectations from the national data center policy, and there are several regulatory issues which we are hoping to get addressed. But also we need to be realistic. I mentioned in response to the first question that power is in the concurrent subject. So there could be a national policy document, and even within the state, there are IT policies, there are data center policies. The problem is that whether those policies which are, if I may use the word, mostly like vision statements, are actually converted into ground realities. For example, I'll tell you, now we are a trade body, so we get to hear a lot of the grievances of the data centers. That वो आके बिजली काट देते हैं. Now data centers are actually considered in several of the states are essential services. But when the person from DISCOM is disconnecting, she or he actually doesn't differentiate between a cinema hall or a data center, and the light gets disrupted. Similarly, there are many, for example, there is a green energy open access rules which central government created. I don't remember the year. It was created with an intention to create certain level of uniformity. But when you look at the states, whether in terms of, I'm mentioning green access open access because that is one of the important component, because if you're not using renewable energy, I think that's an important factor to decide whether your data center is green or not. There are eligibility criteria, there are variations. There are variations in terms of time period when you get actually open access. There are variations in terms of charges. For example, I just listed down some of the charges. So there is transmission charge, there is wheeling charge, there is cross subsidy charge, there is standby charge, there are banking charges, and there was a recent amendment through which they have included other charges. Now other charges could mean anything. For example, I just read up Karnataka has a facilitation fee. Then Rajasthan has a different fee, I don't remember the name. Now cross subsidy charge is nothing but for the benefit of the audience. So let's say if I am charging less to resident customers or the farmers, which I think makes sense, but then that is being compensated by the industrial consumers. Now it also, it's one may say, why not? You are like the guzzlers. But even within that, there needs to be certain amount of policy stability, certainty, and it needs to be phased out. You can't be charging the cross-subsidy charges till eternity. In states, there are litigations. I mentioned the term banking. In Maharashtra, there is Bombay High Court judgment is going on. In Telangana, the Telangana High Court is vested with a matter with respect to cross-subsidy charges. Sorry, that matter actually has been settled by Supreme Court, but the government is still yet, if I may say, it's still sleeping over the directive of the Supreme Court, and nothing has happened. So there are these regulatory issues which are across the states. The good part is there are states which have established data centers. They're willing to sit down with different states and central government and create some kind of benchmarks, whether it respect to the open access, the different aspects of power, different aspects of building the building norms of the data centers. I think if that happens, that could be actually a great move forward in creating some kind of harmonization. And I must tell you, central government is very sensitive about this. They don't want to thrust it upon any of the state governments, nor legally it can. So I think if we cooperate, I think some of these regulatory issues can be certainly addressed to a large extent. One last point on the financial aspect, because see, all these emerging technologies, green data centers, finally it all needs money, and money means you need a lot of investment. Now one of the challenges of the investment is that you need a certain tax regime. Sorry, I'm a bit digressing from the green data center topic, but I think it has an indirect correlation. So there are a lot of issues with permanent establishment. There are a lot of issues that there are no input tax credit given on constructing data centers. So I think you need to look at the whole picture. Only then I think we can have a more meaningful discussion on data centers.
Thank you, Shadipto, for sharing some of those barriers. This brings me to you, Mr. Jitesh. Based on your global experience, what are some lessons that India can learn from more mature data center ecosystem to sort of overcome some of the barriers that we've just discussed? I think you're on mute, sir. So,
I'm audible now?
yeah.
Yeah. So, since I look after the entire Asia Pacific data centers segment, we have some good examples. Like Singapore is one of the best examples. The country is really focused on sustainability to the extent that they put a moratorium on data centers for 2 years almost. No single data center was allowed. And then they came out with norms which are specifically focused towards sustainable data centers. So data centers which meet certain norms in terms of efficiency, power efficiency, water usage efficiency, were were allowed to set up new data centers. So that kind of practices only can force. So one is like the industry is forced to do these kind of things. Now, what happens is when you look at investment and returns, the ROIs, what happens is the profitability factor is focused on, and then the factors like energy, so whenever you're trying to make a profitability of a segment, you often try to ignore some elements which may not have a direct impact. For example, the green part of it, right? But something like a state government or a government body insisting on such kind of parameters forces the industry to work backwards, right? The profit is achieved after accounting for this kind of factor. So we have seen that Singapore has formed the Sijori Pact, wherein the entire data center is getting dispersed across 3 regions, that is Malaysia, Indonesia, and Jurong Island in Singapore. So those kind of policies which are important. So I would so we had a discussion last time with Sadhita also. I think India is a federal state. So instead of various central government giving directives, I think we need to come on a forum, common forum, discuss this and arrive at a common thing and then adopt that as a best practices. And that is the only way it can be adopted. Second is we have to look at we are an equatorial country. So what is applicable in the Nordic countries, like the countries where they have maximum amount of temperature is winters compared to other countries like US. The climatic conditions will differ. So we need to have our policies which will address this on a long-term basis. And also the most important factor that we have not accounted is the climate change. The climate change which has to be factored into a green data center. So because a year back when the temperatures rose up to 50 degrees in European countries, most of their data centers were not designed enough to meet that kind of a climatic requirement. So I think India has that vast, diverse climatic conditions. I think that also should get used a better way in terms of setting up green data centers. So some incentives at some state levels where renewable energy is supported in a big way, that can help us to even out the amount of data. So for example, a lot of data centers set up on the northern side of the country can benefit from the winter temperatures for a major part of the season, right? So those kind of factors when we have, so for there's a strong need for a national body to look into these aspects. And I would say being studying this data center industry, this is the only industry which has brought the power usage into forefront. We never talked about the other industries which have been also power guzzlers, but they were never highlighted that. But data center is you should give a credit or discredit for getting the power aspect more important at a national level and from a sustainability point of view.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, sir. I understand all of us have sort of touched upon some wishful thinking, if we may call it, as to what can maybe go into, the data center policy that the government is drafting. But I would like to hear your final thoughts on some principles or policy elements that should be prioritized to ensure that sustainability remains embedded at the core of the forward-looking policy. We'll start with you, Dipakshi.
For me, it would be two things specifically. One, when we are looking at the data center policy, we are really looking at the large scale of data centers that are being put. If we have to talk about the permeation of data centers into the smaller cities, or for that matter, more unifiedly across the length and the breadth of the country, need to look at smaller form factor data centers as well, the data centers at the edge, that is called, direct impact on sustainability, direct impact on cost effectiveness, direct impact on economic impact, right? And the second piece that and this is in the wishful list, is what I started with. There are just too many different moving pieces. It is not just the center and the state in the federal structure. It is not just the state and the concurrent lists. When it comes to the way a lot of these matters are broken, it is not even just about no unified ministry that alone can really take a call. So if we were to reimagine a lot of these discussions, it really has to be a ground up discussion on what is, and again, an example I would use is when we talk about, let's say today, the cert fins, or whether we talk about the data policies in finance. It's a very different lens, because every actor knows what that actor is trying to govern, rather than one actor trying to govern something that that actor can't even control. So a more, and I wouldn't say responsible, but I would say more nimble policy making that would really make a difference.
Just 2 points that the policy should remain a policy document and should not end up becoming a soft, hard-coded instrument. I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but that I think we should be very wary of. And second, I think the legacy of policy is not actually translating into ground realities. I think if we can address that problem, I think I can talk about some of the principles, I think, but I'm just trying to address the larger problem, whether it is a state level policy, whether it is data center policy. We were speaking to some of the CFOs about the IT policy, which was created last in 2012. And I was actually surprised. And first I was actually a bit of condescending that they don't know, but then after 1 hour with the discussion, I found merit in their ignorance that they didn't know that India has an IT policy which was created in 2012. I think so. We can create policies, and we should really put our brains into creating that policy. I'm not discounting that. It's a very important exercise. But I think we also need to ensure that we implement that whatever we are writing in those policies in a timeline manner. I think that would be a great move ahead. Thanks.
Dr. Mathur?
I think so. Just to build on what Sudipto said, I think completely agree on that. But also, in order to implement, I think we need trackability. So what is being done and what can be done, we need to be nimble but flexible, because I think different use cases will have different kinds of things which can get done, and innovation will keep happening, as we also heard. So I think that flexibility but accountable monitoring and tracking to see how we progress forward is very important to me.
Abhishek, would you like to go next, please?
I will just strengthen Sudipto's point. Everybody sitting here, if you just run a photo analytics tool, which we ran and we submitted this report also. So a company which is banned in India has got listed on a GEM portal through a shell company, and the same photo which is on the website is also on the GEM portal. So yeah, so monitoring becomes a very important thing. Which we can show it right now. But anyway, wishful thinking. The wishful thinking, ideally, I would really like data center to be completely federated up to village level. It should get down right up to the mobile level. Nobody talks about mobile. 3 gigawatt, nobody talks about it. Why have one power guzzler sitting in Mumbai, which is a strategic place? 60% of data centers are in Mumbai. We should be actually aiming for nano data centers, which goes right up to the village level. Not only that helps in strategic control. So if anybody bombs or any data center goes, you have, it's like a spider network. It also dispels this whole discussion of power guzzler, and somebody told that thankfully data center brought this power into the picture. That also vanishes. And if it goes up to the village level, there will be a local innovation. In some villages in Rajasthan, they may use solar cells. In some villages, they may use water. In some others, it will allow a lot of innovation to happen. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I think this was quite an enriching discussion. It sort of brought out the urgency and the opportunity that lies ahead. Thank you for your time, everyone. We also have Mr. Santosh from MITI. He'll be facilitating the speakers. So we can start one by one. So,
Mr. Sudipto Banerjee from NASSCOM. Okay. Yes. Sir, I'm sorry. You may want to come here. Oh, okay. Yes. Sir, आप इधर आ जाओ. इधर से. हाँ, please. Yeah, that's it. Yes, Mr. Sudipto Banerjee from NASSCOM. And Ms. Dipakshi Mahindru. From Intel. You will. Dr. Mathur from TERI. Mr. Abhishek Bhatt from Bharat Digital Infrastructure Association. Ms. Spriha Pandey from Chase Advisors. Thank you for organizing this session. And Mr. Jitesh Karlikar from Data Centers, who's joined us online at JLL. We will have your certificate sent to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining online. Yes, there's a... Yes, sir, please don't leave. There's a group photograph that we have, a mandatory one at the IIGF here. Request all the panelists to please just... Sudipto, Dipakshi. Yes, everyone, please. Yes, sir. Yes, we'll arrange that. You may please stand here. Who's background? You could come here. Yeah. Yes. Screen on. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. That concludes day 1 of IIGF. There is tea and snacks outside for all of you. Thank you so much.
হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ বাংলা বলছে